Hey, my name is Evan. I'm 25, and I split my time between the family wood shop in Burlington, Vermont, and fixing up the small cedar house my dad left me on the edge of town. It's not much a two-bedroom with a sagging porch and a roof that leaks when the snow melts too fast, but it's mine. The wood shop keeps the bills paid sanding boards and building custom furniture for folks who want something that lasts. The house is my project, my quiet place. I rip out old flooring plane beams and dream about turning it into something more one day. Maybe a little cafe, maybe just a home that doesn't feel so empty. I don't go out much. Burlington's got its charm, cobblestone streets, Lakeview's crowds in the summer, but I stick to the outskirts. My mornings are coffee from a dented thermos, my evenings are takeout and sketches for the next job. The last girl I dated left 2 years ago said she needed more than sawdust and small town nights. I didn't argue. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'm just better with wood than people. It was a crisp fall morning, the kind where the air smells like leaves and distant wood smoke when I stopped at the Daily Grind. A coffee shop downtown I usually avoid. Too many tourists, too many laptops. But my thermos was empty and I needed something strong before heading to the shop. The place was packed the line, snaking past a chalkboard menu and a display of overpriced pastries. I was staring at the board trying to decide if I could justify a $5 latte when a voice behind me cut through the noise. Hey, please, pretend you're my boyfriend. Right now. I turned, and before I could process the words, she was there, arms around my neck, pulling me down, her lips on mine. It wasn't long, maybe 2 seconds, but it was soft, warm, and so unexpected my heart stuttered like a misfired nail gun. Her hair smelled like vanilla and rain, and her hands gripped my jacket like she was holding on for dear life. When she pulled back, her eyes were wide, a mix of panic and apology. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her breath warm against my cheek. "That guy coming this way, he's my ex." I followed her gaze. A man was weaving through the crowd, tall with wavy hair and a white shirt tucked too neatly into his jeans. He had the kind of smile that looked practiced, like he knew it worked on people. He was headed straight for us, his eyes locked on her. I didn't think. I just slid an arm around her waist, pulling her closer, and turned so we were facing him together. "Everything okay, babe?" I said, loud enough for him to hear. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. She leaned into me, her body tense but fitting against mine, like we'd done this 100 times. "Yeah," she said, her voice pitched high, playful. "Just grabbing coffee with my favorite guy." The ex-Mark, I'd learned later, stopped a few feet away. His smile faltered, his eyes flicking from her to me, then to my arm around her. "Lena," he said, his tone smooth but sharp underneath. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Funny how that works," she said, her grip tightening on my jacket. Evan and I were just leaving. I nodded at him, keeping my expression neutral. "Nice to meet you, man." He didn't respond, just stared for a second longer like he was trying to figure out if I was real. Then he muttered something under his breath and turned, disappearing into the crowd. The second he was gone, Lena let out a breath, her whole body sagging against me. "Oh my God," she said, stepping back, her hands dropping to her sides. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. I just saw him and panicked." I was still reeling, my lips tingling where hers had been. "It's fine," I said, managing a grin. "Not the worst way to start a morning." She laughed a nervous sound and ran a hand through her hair, brown, wavy, falling just past her shoulders. She was maybe 30, dressed in a wool coat and jeans, a scarf loose around her neck. Her eyes were green, bright, but tired, like she hadn't slept well in a while. "I owe you big time," she said. "I'm Lena, by the way. Lena Harper." "Evan," I said, shaking her hand when she offered it. Her grip was firm, her fingers cold. "Evan Caldwell, so ex-boyfriend." She winced, glancing at the door like she expected Mark to come back. "Yeah, long story, not a good one." I wanted to ask more, but the barista called my name, sliding a black coffee across the counter. I grabbed it, then nodded at the line. "You want something, my treat? For, services rendered." She smiled real this time, and it hit me harder than the kiss. Coffee sounds perfect. We stood off to the side while she ordered a latte with oat milk, no foam. The shop was loud, people talking over each other, the espresso machine hissing like it was mad at the world. Lena kept her voice low like she didn't want anyone else to hear. He's persistent, she said, stirring her drink. We broke up 6 months ago, but he doesn't get the hint. Shows up at my work, calls my mom, texts me at 2 a.m. like nothing happened. I saw him walk in and I just reacted. Hence the kiss, I said, raising an eyebrow. Hence the kiss, she repeated, her cheeks flushing. I swear I'm not usually that forward. You were just there. And you looked safe. Safe, I said, laughing under my breath. That's a new one. You know what I mean, she said, nudging my arm. You didn't freak out. Most guys would have. I shrugged, sipping my coffee. It was too hot, but I needed something to do with my hands. I've had worse surprises. You okay now? She nodded, but her eyes flicked to the door again. Yeah, he's gone. For now. She took a sip, then looked at me curious. What about you? What's a guy like you doing in a place like this? Needed caffeine, I said. I work at my family's wood shop, fix up my dad's old house on the side. Not exactly a downtown regular. Wood shop, she said, like she was picturing it. That's cool. You build things, tables, shelves, whatever people pay for. The house is my real project. Needs a lot of work, but it's got potential. She smiled softer now. I like that. Potential. We talked a little longer, standing by the window as the crowd thinned. She told me she was a book editor, freelance, mostly romance novels. People think it's all steamy scenes, she said, rolling her eyes. It's more about fixing plot holes and crying over deadlines. I told her about the house, how I was tearing out the old kitchen, dreaming of a space that felt like home. It was easy, the kind of conversation that didn't need forcing. But then her phone buzzed and her face tightened. Work, she said, slipping it into her pocket. I should go. Thanks again, Evan, for everything. Anytime I said meaning it more than I should have. She hesitated, then scribbled her number on a napkin. In case you ever need a coffee partner. Or you know someone to kiss in a pinch. I laughed, pocketing the napkin. I'll keep that in mind. She left with a wave, her coat swinging as she stepped into the chilly air. I stood there a long time, coffee cooling in my hand, the taste of her still on my lips. I didn't know her, not really. But as I walked back to my truck, the napkin tucked safe in my pocket, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had just started. Something I wasn't ready to name. I didn't expect to hear from her. The napkin with Lena's number sat on my kitchen counter for a full day, tucked under a coffee mug, like it was just another receipt. I told myself I'd text her, thank her for the laugh, maybe grab that coffee she offered, but every time I picked up my phone, I stopped. What do you say to a woman who kissed you to dodge her ex? Hey, great save, loved the lip service. It all sounded stupid in my head. The house was quiet that night, the kind of quiet that creeps in when you're used to being alone. I was sanding a tabletop in the garage, the radio playing some old Springsteen song when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I wiped sawdust off my hands and opened the message. Hey, it's Lena, the kiss and run girl from the coffee shop. Still owe you that coffee? You free tomorrow? I stared at the screen longer than I should have. My thumb hovered, then typed before I could overthink it. Free after 3. Daily grind again, or somewhere quieter. Her reply came fast. Quieter. There's a place called Maple and Bean on Pine Street. 3:30 work, I sent a thumbs up, then set the phone down like it might bite me. I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't the guy who got random kisses from strangers or follow-up texts or whatever this was. But I wasn't about to say no. The next day I showed up at Maple and Bean 10 minutes early. It was smaller than the daily grind, tucked between a bookstore and a bike shop with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard that actually looked hand-drawn. The air smelled like roasted beans and something sweet, cinnamon maybe. I grabbed a corner table by the window, the one with the wobbly leg, and ordered a black coffee. My hands were steady, but my pulse wasn't. Lena walked in at 3:28, shaking off a light drizzle from her umbrella. She wore green sweater, jeans, and boots. Her hair loose and a little messy from the wind. No coat today, just a scarf that slipped off one shoulder as she scanned the room. When she spotted me, her smile was quick, almost nervous, but it lit up her face in a way that made the cafe feel smaller. Hey, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. You beat me here. Early's my thing, I said, pushing a menu toward her. Figured I'd stake out the good table. She laughed, settling in. This place is perfect. Less chaos, more real. The barista came over and Lena ordered a chai latte. When the drinks arrived, she wrapped her hands around the mug, her eyes flicking to mine. So she said I owe you an explanation. Or at least a thank you that doesn't involve assaulting you in public. Assault's a strong word, I said, grinning. I've had worse mornings. She bit her lip, half smiling. Still, I'm not usually that impulsive. He has this way of showing up when I least expect it. I saw him walk in and my brain short-circuited. I leaned back studying her. Up close without the panic, she looked tired but sharp, like someone who'd learned to keep her guard up, but hadn't let it harden her completely. He seems like a real piece of work, I said. You okay? She nodded, but her fingers tightened on the mug. I'm fine. Mostly. We were together 3 years. He was, charming at first. The kind of guy who makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. Then it was like he decided I was his to manage. Where I went, who I saw, what I wore. I ended it 6 months ago, but he doesn't let go easy. Keeps texting, showing up at my office, calling my mom like we're still a thing. I whistled low. That's not an ex, that's a stalker. Pretty much, she said, her voice quieter. I moved out of our apartment, took freelance editing gigs so I could work from anywhere. Thought distance would help. It hasn't. I didn't know what to say to that. I'd never dealt with anything like Mark. My breakups were clean girl leaves. I sand a table, life moves on. But watching Lena, the way her shoulders carried weight she didn't talk about, made me want to do something. Anything. You don't owe me the story, I said. But I'm a good listener if you want to unload. She smiled softer this time. You're sweet. Most guys would have run after that kiss. Most guys aren't me, I said, and it came out more serious than I meant. Her eyes held mine for a second, something flickering there, curiosity maybe, or recognition. Fair enough. Your turn then. What's the deal with the woodshop guy who lets strangers kiss him? I laughed, rubbing the back of my neck. Not much of a deal. Family business, my dad started it. I grew up sweeping sawdust. Now I build stuff, fix stuff. The house I'm working on? It's his old place. He passed a few years back, left it to me. I'm turning it into something. Maybe a cafe one day. Haven Brews, I'm calling it. A place where people can just be. Haven Brews, she repeated like she was tasting it. I love that, a safe spot. God knows I could have used one a few times. You and me both, I said. We talked for hours, the cafe emptying around us. She told me about editing romance novels, how she loved finding the heart of a story but hated the deadlines. I told her about the house, how I'd ripped out the rotten floorboards, found my dad's old carving knife hidden in a wall. How every nail I drove felt like keeping him around. She listened like it mattered, her chin in her hand, her eyes never leaving mine. You're good at this, she said at one point. Making things feel possible. Wood's easy, I said. People are harder. She laughed, and it was the kind of laugh that made you want to hear it again. Tell me about it. There was a moment when our coffees were gone and the barista started stacking chairs that our knees brushed under the table. Neither of us moved. Her scarf had slipped completely off, and I noticed the way her fingers traced the rim of her mug, slow and deliberate. That kiss? I said, my voice low. Was it really just to get rid of him? She looked up, her eyes searching mine. At first, yeah, but... She paused, then smiled, small and real. It wasn't awful. I grinned. High praise. Don't let it go to your head, she said, but she was smiling too. The cafe was closing, the lights dimming. We stood outside under the awning, the drizzle turning to mist. She pulled her scarf tighter, her breath visible in the cold. I should go, she said, but she didn't move. Yeah, I said, my hands in my pockets. Or, you could come see the house sometime. It's not much, but I make a mean spaghetti. Her laugh was soft, tempting. I'll think about it. She started to walk away, then turned back. Evan, yeah. Thanks for not making it weird. Anytime, I said. I watched her go, her figure disappearing into the misty street. My phone buzzed as I reached my truck. Spaghetti sounds good. Text me when you're free. I smiled all the way home, the napkin with her number now in my wallet, not under a mug. The house felt different when I walked in, like it was waiting for something too. I don't know what I was expecting when I invited Lena over, but it wasn't the way my hands shook while I chopped onions for the sauce. The house was as clean as it had ever been. Floors, swept tools stowed, the leaky faucet in the kitchen finally fixed. I'd even dug out a tablecloth from a box in the attic one my mom used for holidays before she and Dad split. It was faded blue, a little frayed, but it made the place feel less like a workshop and more like a home. Lena showed up at 6 sharp, a pie tin balanced in her hands, her hair tied low and loose, a few strands curling against her neck. She wore a white button-up sleeves rolled to her elbows and jeans that had seen better days. No scarf tonight, just a canvas jacket, she shrugged off at the door. Apple pie, she said, holding it up like a peace offering. Store-bought crust, but I made the filling, don't judge me. Never, I said, taking the tin. Smells better than anything I've cooked in years. She stepped inside, her eyes moving over the space-exposed beams, the wood stove crackling in the corner, the stack of blueprints on the counter. This place is incredible, she said, running a hand along the kitchen island I'd built last month. You weren't kidding about the potential. It's a work in progress, I said, stirring the sauce. Like me. She laughed soft and real, and it settled something in my chest. I gave her a quick tour: living room with the sagging couch, the upstairs bedroom I hadn't touched yet, the back porch where the board still needed replacing. She listened, asked questions, her fingers brushing the wood like she could feel the story in it. Back in the kitchen, we worked side by side. I boiled pasta. She sliced bread, humming under her breath. The radio played low, some old Fleetwood Mac song, and the windows fogged from the heat. It was easy, the kind of easy I hadn't felt in years. When the sauce splattered on the stove, she grabbed a towel without thinking, wiping it up like she'd done it 100 times. Dinner was simple: spaghetti with marinara garlic bread, the pie for dessert. We ate at the table, the blue cloth catching crumbs, the light from a single bulb overhead casting soft shadows. Lena twirled pasta around her fork, her eyes bright. This is good, she said. Like really good. You've been holding out on me. Family recipe, I said, grinning. Dad's side. He wasn't much for cooking, but he could make a mean sauce. She nodded, her smile fading just a touch. You miss him? Yeah, I said. Every day. This house? It's his. I'm just trying to keep it alive. She reached across the table, her hand covering mine for a second. You're doing more than that. After we ate, I noticed the kitchen chair wobble when she sat back down. One of the legs had been loose for weeks, a project I kept putting off. Hold up, I said, grabbing my toolbox from the corner. Let me fix this before you end up on the floor. Lena watched, leaning against the counter as I flipped the chair over, sanding the leg, tightening the screws. You just do this, she said, half laughing. Fix things. Like it's nothing. It's what I know, I said, testing the chair. Wood's honest. You see the problem, you fix it. She crouched beside me, her shoulder brushing mine. Let me help. She handed me a screw, her fingers steady, and we worked together, tightening, adjusting until the chair sat solid. When we stood, she didn't move back right away. The kitchen felt smaller, the air warmer. Thanks, she said, her voice low. For dinner. For this. Anytime, I said, and meant it. We moved to the porch, the night cold but clear, stars sharp above the trees. I'd strung a single bulb out there, its glow soft against the dark. We sat on the steps, coffee mugs in hand, the pie tin between us. The silence was comfortable but full, like it was holding something back. Lena broke it first. I haven't felt this calm in a long time, she said, staring at the trees. Not since before Mark. He always made me feel like I was being watched, judged, like I had to be someone else to be enough. I set my mug down, my hand still. You don't have to be anyone else here. She turned, her eyes catching the light. I know. That's what scares me. I didn't push, just waited. She took a breath, then asked, that kiss in the coffee shop. For you, was it just part of the act? I looked at her, really looked. The way her hair fell across her cheek, the way her hands wrapped around her mug like it was an anchor. No, I said. Wasn't an act for me. She didn't smile, didn't look away. I didn't want it to be just once, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I'm scared. Of wanting this. Of messing it up. You won't, I said. Not with me. She laughed, a small, shaky sound. You don't know me well enough to say that. I know enough, I said. You're here. You're real. That's more than most people give. She set her mug down her hand, finding mine in the dark. Her fingers were warm, calloused from typing maybe, or life. We didn't kiss, not yet. But we sat there, hands linked the night wrapping around us like a promise neither of us was ready to name. Inside, I showed her the notebook I kept in the living room, a beat-up thing, filled with sketches, and tucked in the back a short story I'd written months ago, about a guy in a wooden house learning to let someone in after loss. I'd never shown anyone. Didn't plan to. Lena flipped through it, her eyes scanning the pages. Evan, she said, her voice soft, this is good. Like really good. It's nothing, I said, my face hot. Just words. It's not nothing, she said, closing the notebook. It's you. And it's beautiful. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. She set the notebook down, her hand lingering on the cover. You should send it somewhere, she said. Let someone else see it. Maybe I said, but I was thinking about her hand still close to mine. We cleaned up together, moving around the kitchen like we'd done it forever. When she grabbed her jacket, I walked her to her car, the gravel crunching under our boots. The air was sharp, the stars brighter now. I meant it, she said at the car, her keys in her hand. About the story. And about this. I know, I said. She hesitated, then stepped closer, her hand brushing my arm. I'm not ready to promise anything, she said, but I want to keep coming back. That's enough, I said. She smiled, got in her car, and drove off, her taillights fading into the dark. I stood there a long time, the cold biting my skin. The house behind me warmer than it had ever been. I didn't know what we were. Didn't need to. But as I walked back inside, the notebook still on the table, I felt something I hadn't in years. A spark like the first cut of a saw into fresh wood. The week after Lena's dinner at my place felt like a dream that I didn't want to wake from. We texted everyday stupid stuff, like her complaining about a manuscript with too many metaphors or me sending a photo of a crooked shelf I'd just fixed. She'd reply with a voice note, her laugh cutting through the static of my phone, and I'd play it twice just to hear it again. We met for coffee once at Maple and Bean, but kept it short. She had deadlines. I had a rush order for a dining table. It wasn't much, but it was ours. Then, one afternoon, I was up on the porch roof hammering new shingles into place, the air cold enough to numb my fingers. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I almost ignored it until I saw Lena's name. I climbed down, wiping sweat and sawdust from my face, and answered, Evan. Her voice was tight, not the easy warmth I was used to. Can you come over? Or can I come to you? I'm at the house, I said, my stomach twisting. What's wrong? I'll explain when I get there. She showed up 20 minutes later, her car crunching over the gravel, her face pale under the porch light. She wore a coat buttoned to her chin, her hands stuffed in her pockets. I met her at the door, toolbox still in hand. Mark, I asked, already knowing. She nodded, stepping inside. He showed up at my office today, asked my boss for my new email, said he needed to talk. Then he called my mom, told her I was going through something, and he was worried. I'm so tired of this, Evan. I set the toolbox down, my hands clenching. He's not gonna stop, is he? Not on his own, she said, her voice shaking. I blocked his number again, but he'll find another way. He always does. I took a breath, trying to keep my anger in check. You want me to talk to him? No, she said quickly, then softer. Maybe. I don't know. I don't want to do this alone anymore. I pulled her into a hug, her coat cold against my flannel. She buried her face in my shoulder, her breath warm through the fabric. You're not alone, I said. Not anymore. She pulled back, her eyes searching mine. Will you come with me to talk to him? Not to fight, just to be there? I need him to see I'm not his to chase. I nodded. Whatever you need. We met Mark the next evening at a bar downtown, one of those places with sticky tables and a jukebox that only played songs from the 90s. Lena picked it public neutral, no chance for a scene. I wore my cleanest jeans and a shirt that didn't smell like sawdust. Lena was in a black sweater, her hair down her chin high. She looked strong, but her hand trembled in mine as we walked in. Mark was already there, sitting at a corner table, a beer in front of him. He stood when he saw us, his smile tight like he'd practiced it in a mirror. Lena, he said, ignoring me, You didn't have to bring a bodyguard. Evan's not a bodyguard, she said, her voice steady. He's with me. I squeezed her hand, stepping forward just enough to make my presence clear. She asked me to come, I said, keeping my tone even. We're here to talk, that's it. Mark's eyes flicked to me, sizing me up. So you're the new guy, he said, his voice dripping with something I didn't like. She moves fast. Watch it, I said, low but firm. Lena stepped in before he could respond. This isn't about Evan, it's about you. You need to stop. The calls, the emails showing up at my work. It's over, Mark. It's been over. He leaned back, his smile fading. You're making a mistake. We were good together. You know we were. No, she said, her voice cutting through the bar's noise. We weren't. You made me feel small. I'm done with that. I stayed quiet, letting her lead, but my hand stayed in hers, grounding her. Mark tried again, his voice softer, wheedling. Lena, come on. We can talk this out. Just us. There's no us, she said. There hasn't been for a long time. Let it go. He looked at me, then his eyes narrowing. You think you're better than me? Some carpenter playing hero. I didn't take the bait. I'm not playing anything, I said. I'm just here for her. You don't get to make her feel scared anymore. The bar was loud, but our corner felt like its own world. Mark stared at us, his jaw tight, then he laughed, a short, bitter sound. Fine, he said, standing. Have your fun. But when it falls apart, don't come crying to me. He walked out the door, swinging shut behind him. Lena let out a breath, her shoulders sagging. I pulled her close, her forehead against my chest. You okay? I asked. She nodded, her voice muffled. Yeah, I think I am. We left the bar, the night cold and clear, the streets quiet. In my truck, she was silent for a while, staring out the window. Then she turned to me, her eyes soft. Thank you, she said, for being there, for not taking over. I meant what I said, I told her, starting the engine. I'm here for you, however you need. She reached for my hand, her fingers lacing through mine. I know. Back at the house, we sat on the porch, the same steps where we'd eaten pie. The air was sharp, the stars bright. She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. If I stayed in Vermont, she said, her voice quiet, would you want me to? I turned, looking at her, really looking. The way her eyes caught the porch light, the way her breath clouded in the cold. I'd want you here every morning, I said. Making coffee, burning toast, whatever. Long as it's with you. She smiled, small but real, and leaned in. This time I kissed her. No ex to dodge, no act to play. Just us, her lips soft and sure, her hands on my face. It wasn't rushed, wasn't desperate. It was a choice, and it felt like everything. When we pulled back, she rested her forehead against mine. I'm staying, she said, at least for now. That's enough, I said. The next day, she brought over a stack of manuscripts and her laptop, set up a corner in the living room. I showed her the story I'd written, the one she'd read that night. You really think it's worth sending? I asked. I know it is, she said, her eyes bright. Let me help. We sent it to a small literary magazine. She knew, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she wrote the cover letter. I didn't expect anything, but a week later an email came, accepted. Lena read it aloud, her voice shaking with excitement, and I just stared at the screen, my heart pounding like I'd never felt before. You did this, I said. We did, she corrected, kissing me quick. Mark didn't show up again. Maybe he got the message. Maybe he didn't. It didn't matter. Lena was here and so was I. Spring came slow to Burlington, the kind of slow that makes you notice every bud on the maple trees and every patch of green pushing through the dirt. The house wasn't just a project anymore, it was Haven Brews. My dad's old place turned into a cafe the way I'd dreamed. I'd finished the porch, added a counter from reclaimed barnwood, hung shelves for books Lena curated. The sign out front was simple, hand-carved Haven Brews, coffee books quiet. No grand opening, no ads, just an open door and a chalkboard that said First Cups on us. The first morning I unlocked at 7, the air still crisp, the lake shimmering in the distance. I was wiping down the counter, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with sawdust that never quite left the place, when the bell above the door jingled. Lena walked in, a bundle of wildflowers in her arms, daisies, black-eyed Susans, a few early lupines she'd picked from the field behind the house. Her hair was loose, her smile easy like she belonged here. Because she did. "You're my first customer," I said, grinning as she set the flowers on the counter. "Thought I'd make it official," she said, her eyes bright. "Plus, I wanted to see you in your element." I poured her a coffee, black no sugar, the way she liked it now, and slid it across the wood. She took a sip, then set it down, stepping closer. "Remember the first time I kissed you?" she asked, her voice low, teasing. "Like I could forget," I said. My hands found her waist, pulling her in. "You were dodging an X." "I was just trying to order coffee." She laughed, her forehead resting against mine. "Best bad decision I ever made." "No X to dodge this time," I said. "Good," she said and kissed me. Not quick, not desperate, just sure. Her lips were warm, tasting of coffee and spring, and the cafe around us faded, the hum of the espresso machine, the creak of the floorboards, the soft clatter of mugs. It was just us choosing this, choosing each other. When we pulled back, her eyes were soft, her hand still on my face. "Kiss me again," she said. No excuses. I did. And it felt like the first time, but better because it was real. The magazine had published my story a month after Lena sent it in. A small journal, nothing fancy, but they'd put it on the cover. The House That Stayed. Lena framed the page and hung it behind the counter next to a shelf of her favorite books. People came for the coffee, stayed for the quiet, left with a story or two. Lena worked from a corner table, her laptop open, editing manuscripts between pouring refills. I built tables, fixed chairs, learned how to make a decent latte. We didn't talk about marriage, didn't need rings or promises. We just lived. Mark never showed up again. Maybe he moved on. Maybe he didn't. It didn't matter. Lena's phone stayed quiet, her smile stayed easy. She'd found her safe place, and I'd found mine. One evening after closing, we sat on the porch, the cafe dark behind us, the wildflowers in a mason jar on the rail. The sky was pink, the air warm, the kind of night that made you believe in second chances. Lena leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. "You know," she said, "I used to think love was something you had to chase. Something that slipped away if you didn't hold tight." I wrapped an arm around her, my fingers tracing the curve of her arm. "And now, I think it's just this," she said, gesturing at the porch, the cafe, the quiet. "Showing up, staying." I nodded, my throat tight. "A kiss started it," I said. "But this is what keeps it." She turned, her eyes catching mine in the fading light. "No more pretending." "No more pretending," I said. She kissed me again, slow and certain, the wildflowers swaying in the breeze. The house, our cafe, our haven, stood solid behind us, its walls holding every moment we'd built. I'd opened a door for a stranger once, not knowing it would open my life. Lena had kissed me to run from her past, not knowing she'd run into her future. Love isn't always loud. It's not always fireworks or grand gestures. Sometimes it's a coffee shop kiss, a leaky roof, a wobbly chair you fix together. Sometimes it's just two people who decide to stay. And for us, that was everything.